Here are the attorneys in their own words.
There was a very brief description on the radio that the father had taken his son out of the house, stripped him naked, had him on his knees, and shot him in the face. I remember it was a gut feeling like, oh my God, you kind of like got the wind knocked out of you. It was just that cruel and cold and bold.
I got a call shortly after the shooting. I was on my way to another courthouse, and this gentleman called me and client and said, hey, my friend's in some trouble. Can you go to this certain precinct and check this out?
Up until 1:20 on the afternoon of November 16th, had led an exemplary life and was exactly who anyone would hope that a young man and then an adult man and a father would be. And I think Jamar's bitter mother's testimony that Jamar never loved his son was refuted both by the testimony there, and it's certainly been refuted by every person we've talked to. He loved his son.
A kid, a 15-year-old kid who was well-liked, respectful of others, respectful of his elders, a fun nephew to be with to his aunt, a respectful and loving grandson to his grandparents, a fun schoolmate, a bright kid. He made a mistake though, and he knew it.
What a great relief it must be. Wasn't actually raped, that's the information he gets from Children's Hospital. And he can relax, and sure, there's something wrong, but it's not as bad as it could be. And he manages to go home. And then he gets a call at 1 o'clock in the morning, and Jamar Jr. is admitting to something, and again the stress level rises again. And at 3 o'clock, he's begging in the morning, he's begging for forgiveness, and the stress level rises again. And they make a decision to deal with this, and he goes and sees Karan, and the stress level builds because she says, no, I'm going to the police, that this isn't going to be something that we can sweep under the rug. This isn't going to be something you can deal with as a family. And the stress level raises, but still, he's hoping against hope. First of all, that his son's not a rapist, and second of all, that his daughter wasn't raped.
Jamar told each of them that he had humped on his little sister. She was in bed. He pulled down her pajama pants, and then while she still had her underwear on, he dry humped her. And that was the extent of that is what he admitted to, and that was the extent, albeit as bad as it is, that is what he had said he had done. And what was disturbing is the fact that Jamar Pinkney Sr. knew when he went to the house, knew when he got the phone call in the morning of the 16th, the 1:20 in the morning phone call, and then when he confronted Jamar Jr. that morning, he knew from Children's Hospital that there was no penetration. There was no injury, there was no disease, there was no bruising, the hymen was intact. And notwithstanding that knowledge, he still did what he did, which led me to the conclusion that he knew what he was going to do when he hung up the phone.
Well, we just heard from both the prosecution and defense in their own words. But right now, what we're going to do is focus a little bit on the defense with the defense attorney, Corbett O'Meara, who joins us. Good morning, Corbett.
Hi, Ryan. Hi, Ryan.
All right. It's actually Vinny, not Ryan today, but that's okay.
Oh, I'm sorry about that. Good morning.
Hey,
I apologize.
not
I can't
a problem.
see you.
Ryan is the young, handsome one. I'm the old guy here. Okay. Let's start. First of all, let me say what a great job you did in your closing argument. We had an opportunity to watch it this morning. Very powerful. But on the other hand, the prosecution, no slouch herself. She did a fantastic job as well. Here's what I want to focus on first, is the gun. The gun, the gun, the gun. A lot of our viewers having problems with the fact that he had the gun with him that day and the fact that, hey, it takes a little bit of thought to introduce a gun into this situation, this very emotional situation. How can the jury get beyond that?
Well, personally, and as I said during my closing argument, I think that is the reason why this great tragedy occurred, that we're such a heavily armed society, that the state of Michigan has will issue CCW permits. You don't need a good reason not to carry a gun. If the state doesn't have a reason why you shouldn't carry a gun, you're allowed.
Let me just interrupt you just for one moment, Corbett, and I understand that argument. That was a great argument you made during the closing portion of this case. But he knew what the whole conversation was going to be about that day, didn't he? He knew what was at stake. He knew what the material, what he was going to talk to his son about. So he knew how emotional everything was going to get. Did he think to maybe not bring the gun, leave the gun at home, and just to protect himself?
I'm sure he wishes he had. I'm sure he wishes he had. He was, as he testified, in the habit of just simply having the gun on him when he wasn't prohibited from having it on him. As he went about his daily business in a very, very dangerous area, probably more dangerous than Fallujah in Iraq, collecting rent, living his life, being a middle-class person in an area where there's a whole lot of not middle-class people. He was in the habit of having a gun in his pocket, and I'm certain that every moment of every day since then he has regretted having that gun on him, because this tragedy never would have occurred if he hadn't been authorized by the state of Michigan to carry that gun, and he didn't get in the habit of carrying that gun.
All right, what I want to do for you now is I want you to take a listen to your client on the stand and then the victim's mother on the stand talking about that moment where Jamar Jr. asked for forgiveness.
He kneeled down in front of me on his knees, started crying, and
What did he say?
said, "Daddy, I'm sorry. Can you forgive me?"
Is that what he'd also said at 3 o'clock in the morning when he talked to you?
Yes.
What was your response?
At that time, I didn't respond.
I'm not knowing what to do. He just standing there, and then he just walked off like this. He got in this car, and I'm still like looking out. He pulled up, looked at the house, and just drove off slowly like, yeah.
And here's, I think, another problem that you guys have that everyone's been talking about is the demeanor of your client and the way he describes what happened contrasted to the way everyone else describes what happened. The way what happened impacted all the other people in that family but didn't seem to impact your client. How does the jury get around that? That aspect of he just comes across so cold. We've gotten email and post and phone call after phone call about that. Corbett?
Well, as I've stated before, this was perhaps the toughest set of facts that I've been defense attorney. I mean, to fight this case, to try to get the jury to believe that it's something other than premeditated murder was an incredibly difficult job. There were many, many horrible facts, including the sensational way that the crime was committed, and then his demeanor after, or as was testified to, his demeanor both in court that they observed and then at the scene. He made a whole lot of bad decisions, and he didn't present very well to the jury. We got to take him like we get him, though, and we can't change what he did. I'm not sure how a person is supposed to react after they have done something like this.
I think part of the problem is we're not seeing any emotion when he talks about what happened that day, when he talks about his son, when he even talks about his 3-year-old daughter who he believes was raped by his son. And it's that lack of emotion that has many people not feeling any sympathy, anything for this guy. When, if you change the facts a little bit, Corbett, if it was like somebody off the street that comes in and rapes some guy's 3-year-old daughter, the jury might get a little bit and say, hey, you know what? That guy got what he deserved because that father was enraged by what that stranger had done. Yet he doesn't give us any of that emotion, any reason to really like him or feel for what he went through.
Yeah, and I saw your video blog yesterday and couldn't agree more with what you're saying. Under different circumstances, with a more sympathetic defendant, with somebody who had behaved in a different manner, if it wasn't a child being killed by a parent, I think this would have been an entirely different situation, and it would have been much easier from a defense perspective. He behaved in the manner he behaved. I think that there would have been more sympathy for him. I remember during my direct examination of Mr. Pinkney, I was choking up a little bit just asking the questions, and he was emoting far less. And if I could have picked the defendant, if I could have picked somebody from Hollywood to do this for me, I wouldn't have picked him. We worked with what we had to work with, and like I said, it was an incredibly difficult case for us. And
Hey, I want
we
to talk
just
about
tried to do
another one of the key witnesses and players in this whole case, Karan Ivy, when she testified and she was cross-examined. Take a look at this part of the cross-examination. Then I want to get your comments about this witness and what impact you think she had on the jury.
But as long as you've known him, he's never been treated for any mental illness, mental disorder, never been under any treatment prior to November 16th of '09.
That I know of, I'm not certain.
Based on what you know, Miss Ivy.
Based on what I know, I'm not certain.
Based on, you either know or you don't know.
I'm not certain.
You lived together for a period of time,
I
correct?
still do not discuss all of his medical whereabouts or what he's going to the doctor for. He's gone to the doctor many times.
Corbett, what do you think her impact on this case and on this jury? I mean, was this a good witness for you, a bad witness? What do you think?
Well, she was certainly a necessary witness because she filled in a lot of the blanks in terms of the examination that was done at Children's Hospital and the subsequent examination where an actual laceration was found in the little girl's vagina. She obviously, as everyone had in this case, a perspective and a bias, and that came through. She did battle some with Ms. Kowal. She did seem to hesitate in answering questions from Ms. Kowal, and that's never good. All we want is witnesses to go in there and police officers, fact witnesses.
But as long as you've known him, he's never.
And Corbett, we have time for one final question here. So, after you listened to the rebuttal closing argument by the prosecution, and I know prosecution gets the last word because they have the burden of proof, was there anything that they brought up or the prosecutor brought up that you said, oh, if I could get up there for just another 3 minutes, I'd like to address it and just clarify it for the jury?
Well, because a trial like this is so draining and so hard, I'm kind of happy that they don't give me another shot because, of course, there's always things. Nothing stands out, though, in terms of something that needed to be addressed. Ms. Kowal, who I have great respect for, who tries very difficult cases literally every day at Frank Murphy, did a great job. And she was primarily doing the same thing in a rebuttal that she did during her initial closing, which is stir the passions of the jury and try to have them make an emotional decision. And I'd have just tried to calm them down again and hope that they made the most rational and reasonable decision that the facts would allow.
Well, Corbett, this is absolutely a difficult case for a criminal defense attorney to get up there, but you did a fantastic job, both during the cross-examination, presentation of your witnesses, and in that closing argument, which was just fantastic. Appreciate your time, sir.
Thank you so much.
All right. All right.